or making crucial national security decisions, or reading human personalities like a world-class psychologist. Algorithms, though, they already do all of these things. In a lot of cases, they do them better than humans. And let's just go to the last example, performing accurate psychological evaluations of people. This is something that is normally entrusted to people who have been in medical school for almost a decade. And how can we expect a bot running on a computer that weighs 2 pounds to have that kind of human nuance to do this task that is so inherently packed with all the weird intricacies of parsing somebody's personality? How can a bot that doesn't know of itself or even see itself, how can it know us? So it's almost unbelievable. I think if bots are capable of doing these types of things, there's really no limit on where they can go. So talking about this story, let's start at the top of it. In the 1960s, NASA had decided to start sending scientists in outer space. And originally, most of the astronauts up to that point had been pulled from the Air Force. They were test pilots, and these men were test pilots. So they drove the planes that first broke the sound barrier. They flew the planes that spied on the Soviet Union. They flew the planes that did, all the crazy things that they did. And there was an understanding, of course, that these planes could crash at any moment, which is why they were called Air Force test pilots. And they often did. A lot of people died. But these men were not fazed by this. They were unflappable. These were the hardest men we had. And so the Air Force and NASA never worried about sending these men into space. There was no worry that if there was a leak in the capsule that the men wouldn't completely concentrate on what had to be done to perhaps get themselves out of this jam. And that's why they made such good astronauts. They wouldn't crack under pressure. But of course, there's no Air Force test pilot program for scientists. How would NASA know who to send up in the capsule? And they also knew that the Russians had several missions compromised by crew conflicts. So they wanted people who they knew, personalities that at first seemed very compatible, but under pressure, it's where these foibles show up. And that's when people start to fray and get at each other's throats. And that's what happens in space. So how could NASA know who would work together well? How could they vet this big pool of scientists who want to go into space and represent the United States? So NASA set off to create this system of personality classification. And it's a predictive system that could foresee these personal conflicts before they happened. And they wanted people who could shut their emotions down and focus on the task at hand, no matter how certain death away from Earth seemed at that point. So NASA